Recording now, unmuted, and I'm going live.
Well, I have people now, but they've got a lot of growth.
Everything's
They're proximity to College Station.
David.
We ready? Okay.
Good morning, it's May 11th, 9:30, and we're gonna call our Board of Adjustment meeting to order. If we could all stand, I ask Mr. Phillips to lead us in our invocation, and we'll do the pledge.
Oh, gracious Father, we thank you for your many blessings. As we gather here today to perform our duties as Board of Adjustment, oh God, we ask that you would look down and guide our mind, control our heart, let us be doing things that we please done in your eyesight, that it be acceptable to you, oh God. Father, we thank you for all the members and ones that assembled here today. We thank you for the blessings upon them. And Lord, when we dismiss from this place, never from your presence. Let us continue to try to live the life that you would be pleased with in our life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
Honor the
Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
One state,
under God, one indivisible.
Thank you.
Don't move it down here. Feel like an outcast down there.
All right, the first item on the agenda is public comments, and we do have, looks like 2 public comments. All right, we'll start with Mr. Scott Lambert. You have 3 minutes.
All right, I'm Scott Lambert. I live at 1652 County Road 2274, Cleveland, Texas. I live outside the city limits. My family actually owns M.A. Cone, or Sadie Cone actually owns it now, but that's my mother-in-law. She's 92 years old. We own 16 acres in one tract. We own 4 other pieces of property totaling, the whole total is 21 acres, and sits up there at 2025, right next to this piece. This piece fronts the 21 acres, okay? In 2010, I sat on a committee here called the ETJ, it was an ETJ study. We studied how this whole town should look. The city paid about 80 grand for this study, right? And basically we sat there and informed, and y'all ought to go back and read it because I think it's still on the website, if I'm not mistaken. 2010 ETJ study. We sat there during that meeting in the same room, and it was packed. And we sat there and told the city that they would have to make hard decisions on where things fit in our community and how our community we want it to look, right? My wife has a law firm here in town. My brother-in-law was Otis Cone. I don't know if y'all know him or whatever, but we sat there and said, when things come to town, we want our community to look one way, right? For us. And things come to town, we're gonna have to say no to where it fits. It's like a piece of puzzle. So what I want y'all to do is look outside the box, because up there on that corner, 2025 corner, that whole section, not just my property or my family's property, but that whole corner, with the new school coming in, with the growth, the mayor on Community Corner said that street that they want to put in that comes back around to Washington Street from where the new school is, it's going to cost $10–11 million. So that whole section, you got to think outside the box and how it's going to look down the road, not what comes today. That's what I want you to consider. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Fred Terrell.
Yes. Thank you. My name is Fred Terrell. I live at 403 Dudley Street here in Cleveland. And my reason for speaking this morning is I've served on the zoning committee for several years, a few years ago. But anyway, we have a whole book of zoning, and it gives us our rules and our regulations. And they're there for a reason. If you want to make a change, sometimes it's necessary. I understand our city's growing. We need an additional growth in the tax base. I understand that. But please, when you do your study and your discussion on this, remember, what does that do to impact the city? If you're going to put quadplexes or build anything, how many cars is that going to add to the situation? As Mr. Scott here just said, over on 2025 is a very busy intersection. Until TxDOT gets that straightened out, it's going to be a big problem. I know they're putting up lines up there now. I want you to consider what that does. How many cars have they put on the road? How many kids in schools are you going to put in there? How does that affect us right now? I know it's good to have growth, good growth, and it's good to have the tax base. But please consider what it does that affects the city. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to our second item on the agenda, which is considering an action on approval of minutes for November 9th, 2021, and December 6th, 2021, and February 23rd, 2022 board meetings. Can I get a motion to approve? Is there any discussions? Is there any? Can I get a motion?
Yeah, make a motion that we approve the reading of the minutes.
Thank you so much. Can I get a vote for the approval of the minutes? Say aye.
All right,
Mr. Okay, the motion passed. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 3, discussion and possible action on variance request by Billy and Wendy Pinson, owner for location listed as 1651 Highway 59 North Bypass, Cleveland, Texas. Matt Lot TR 28, acres 2.5, for several variance requests regarding section 74 recreational vehicle park ordinance. Property was approved for a specific use permit for zone GC, which is general commercial. Mr. Vincent, would you all come up to discuss? Thank you.
Make sure you talk into the microphone, please.
What do you need is that?
We need you to
Oh,
talk
so
about
your
variance.
variances.
Please tell the board what you're
Okay.
here for.
So basically, with our variance, one of them was that we have 2.5 acres there, and y'all require 3, and that, the pavement variance, like asphalt road instead of concrete, but I'm not sure that's really I'm not sure that's a variance or that's a problem, but I think it is.
Yes, it is, would be an asphalt, use asphalt for, it's got something to do with the drainage, and the drainage system.
Okay, well, we would do, the step down like where, like where the actual RVs would be, we would have concrete there, but we're trying to do asphalt for just the main road.
For the main road?
Mm-hmm.
Text dot came in, we're following the plan looking for drainage,
Yes, sir.
and they told us which way to drain the property, so we're still trying to wrap that up and get that submitted with our architect, and they're doing I don't even get the wrong white words, but the elevation.
Elevation.
And then when we're submitting that to text out, they said basically that it didn't bother them as long as the drainage was towards the roadway, because they have drainage built into their systems to handle that, and so we were just flowing it in that direction.
Yes, sir.
Right now, I think pretty much the drainage goes to the back of the property, but they want us to make it where the drainage comes to the front.
Do you guys have a detention pond or is it sheet drain?
No, they don't.
So it naturally drains.
Actually drains, yes.
And then the third variance was in the ordinance, it says that they want 65 by 30 foot spaces. And the way the architect drew it up and the way that he's having to try to lay it all out.
It's 30 by 45.
Yeah, 65 by 30, but we're looking for 45 by 30.
Because no RV, really a 30 by 65, because we have mobile home parks also. Really a 30 by 65 would be more like, that's almost 2,000 square feet. That's more like for a mobile home than an RV, which the max on RVs are usually 42 feet, Now the 30, we feel the 30 is right because, you have to park your car beside it, whatever. But as far as the 65, and that's basically right.
So I think that's the 3 variances that the architect identified when we were going over the code, the city codes.
And then drawings, I don't know.
Any drawings, anything like that we have.
Is that city water?
Well, that's the other problem. We're gonna go through that next, is on that strip there, it's supposed to be city water and city sewer, but there is none. Okay,
Let me step in.
okay, go ahead.
Want everybody to keep their eye on the ball. These are good questions that have nothing to do with while we're here today. The asphalt concrete is a non-issue. We allow heat. Drainage is really not within this body's purview. So I want y'all to focus on the 3 items that they're asking for. If you look at, has a draft order in your packet. In that initial paragraph, it outlines 3 things I want y'all to focus on today. That being said, their burden here today is to show you that there's some unique characteristic of the property which creates an undue hardship, a legal hardship where they cannot comply with the regular rules. So their burden today is to explain to y'all why, if they did comply with the rules, it would create that hardship. Does that make sense?
So then really we're talking about the 3 acres versus the
3 acres.
Right.
Versus the 2.5.
Going to a space dimension, the 30 by 45 versus 30 by 65, and reducing the minimum area from 1950 to 13. Those are the 3 issues.
Yeah, I noticed the square footage change when he spoke about the asphalt. When you reduce the size, you have to make more room for the parking area in order to have the proper drainage, so you won't flood somebody else. That's why I brought that to the
And I think
attention when he said that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes.
That's part of the program.
Yes.
So we got the drainage worked out with the state, we're still trying to get all that submitted, but we did get the water and sewer, they got it down the street, they're bringing it to
And
us.
they have it to bring to us, but it's not there, but we would basically be fronting the load of everything.
We can't, the property, so we're locked in and bound, so the 2.5 acres is the maximum
Yes, sir.
we come up with right now. And then the other issue was the lot size, when, like I said, when the architect was laying it out for the 2.5 acres, he said that he needs to decrease that by 20 foot, that we had to meet a fire marshal code, and to be able to get the fire trucks in and out, so he needed to widen the street.
That'd be a 23-foot lane.
Right, to meet that, so he said we needed to make sure we can get a variance for you to shrink that down. So
Yes, sir.
that's the 2.
No, I just want y'all to articulate it on the
Thank
record.
you.
Sorry.
We're not. So,
Questions in, or?
Yeah, that's,
yes,
I don't know if she's asked.
You want us to have any questions?
I think they're asking for quite a bit of concessions from the city. I think the city ought to work with property owners as far as they can. But I think in this instance, they're asking more than I think the city ought to give. So I'm not in favor of this variance.
Well, that's why I was concerned, that's why I was asking the questions about was it city water, was it city sewer?
yes.
Because it's gotta be public water.
Right,
So if you're doing a water well, you gotta have
no,
a filtration system or.
no, we are paying,
When we met with the board, that zoning board, one of the things their concern was too is about the water and septic and how we're gonna bring it, because they said there's no water and septic at that freeway.
Right.
So they felt like it was a benefit to the city that because we're paying for the infrastructure to get it to our property. And once they get it to our property, then all that frontage road up there actually opens up, and it's a benefit to other investors or businesses to come in and say, hey, the water and sewer's has already been brought up through that property. So they thought that's why they kind of leaned towards giving us the zoning code to change the zoning, because they realized that would be an enhancement to the city by us paying for all the infrastructure to get up through there, which would open up, like I said, businesses up through there.
for other businesses, because that property, because it's kind of stagnant there, because there's no water and sewer, and it's costing a lot to get there.
So we feel like that once we get this started, then obviously other businesses will be, as the property, there's, acres behind us, there's acres beside us on both sides. Because it's raw land all the way around us. And we think that over time, that once we get the utility brought in, then that's gonna open up even more business community looking at the
Yes, sir.
of developers.
Well, I was on the development board with Lou Myers and there was an issue about bringing the utilities across the river here, going into Montgomery County to do the racetrack out at Fort Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I asked the question about the city utilities, because I was in that development stage.
Well, it's because it's in the city and it is costing us a lot up front, but in the end, it's just gonna help the city.
Yes, it will.
To more bit, and I think that land's just kind of set there because nobody wants that expense.
Yes. I was just kind of bringing it up, but you guys was aware of the expense that it would take to
Oh, yeah.
get that sewer in and.
Robert, in the water department, they've already given us an amount to bring the resources to us.
But you guys get blindsided,
Oh, yes,
And
sir.
for 2 years ago, we tried to start this project. It was very, very expensive, but since then, I think they put a water well in, they got closer to us, I think.
Yes, sir.
sir.
I'm doing one at Midway and 105 right now on 7.5 acres.
It's
You're
actually,
doing an RV park too?
Yes, sir.
or something?
Yes, sir.
well, it's actually gotten more expensive because in the last bit, they didn't include the pump station.
Conversation after this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I was just gonna tell y'all that you can address this collectively or individually, it's up to each individual request separately, or you can do it all in one motion. Either way, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
There is a sample order in your packet. So the, Madam Chair President asked me to mention this. The board members, there's a sample order in your packet. It's open for discussion, but the 3 items that they're asking for is to allow an RV space to be less than 3 acres. Because right now the ordinance is 3 acres, they only have 2.5. So that would need to be approved. And then they also need the RV space dimensions to be 30 by 45 which would then reduce the minimum area from 1950 to 1,350 feet. And then the third one is to allow asphalt instead of concrete, which is technically already in the ordinance. But those are the three things that they're asking for. So y'all can either approve all three, or you can approve two, one, whatever the board decides. Just make sure that your motion, specific, as to what you're approving. If there's any discussion?
Is that understood?
I don't have any problem with the reducing the acreage size from 3 acres to 2.5. But I do have a problem with making concessions on the size of the RV spaces and on the asphalt instead of concrete.
Yes.
Yeah.
The asphalt.
He said the
Is,
asphalt.
is the asphalt,
The
the,
concrete was not, it's already in there that you can do that.
It's, the ordinance states that you can use non-permeable, materials. Non-permeable is both concrete and
Oh,
asphalt.
okay, we didn't know.
yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
so that's
so that
not-
was a variance we didn't understand,
understand.
sorry about that.
Right, it's not a problem, but you already had the two other variances,
I got
so
you.
you still had to come before the board, but I
Yeah,
just
but-
wanted to
So,
let you know, non-permeable means concrete or asphalt.
okay, we didn't know that, thank you.
All right, at this time, is there any other discussion? Concerning this variance? All right. At this time, I need a vote for, a motion to, pass the variance or deny.
I'll make a motion that we deny the variances,
All three, or just
2 of the 3.
2 of the 3? Which 2? Deny.
Just for the record, this, based on conversations you had earlier, it sounded like you were okay with the reduction of the acreage from 3 to 2.5.
That's correct.
So really, the only applicable one on the table at this point would be the reduction of the size of the lot. Not only in linear feet, but in square feet.
If they reduce the lot size of the actual RV, then that would accommodate to reduce the acreage size, but that would reduce your occupancy or how many
Right.
trailers that you wanna put there, and that would really cover, it would make it. I know what you're trying to.
Well, there is a motion on the floor to approve the reduction in size from 2.5.
Yes.
Or from 3 to 2.5 and deny the other requests. That is the current motion on the floor. It'll die if there's not a second, but if there's a second, y'all can move to vote.
If the utilities are future, and they come into there, it'll work, everything will work out. Real good if they, I guess if the city holds them to the inspections and stuff that's in the contract, that they'll get that done as they continue. You can do future, and let them continue their, the RV park, that would be appropriate.
Is there a second to the motion?
Okay, thank you so much. And can we, vote? All in favor to pass, the variance to approve the, acreage?
I can vote to approve the change in acreage, but not the other.
That is the motion on the floor.
Yes.
So the vote would be to approve the reduction in the acreage and deny the reduction in the actual, space size.
Is there a second?
There was a second already. We're just moving to vote.
Oh, so all in favor for the, variance to change the acreage? in favor of that?
Yeah, I'm not
You don't understand?
calculating why you couldn't get everything they need to make it.
Because you gotta have so much, you gotta have so much for the drainage. You gotta have so much for, if it's previous, if it's concrete, or if it's asphalt. Asphalt is like a gravel area, it controls the drainage of the property. It keeps from flooding, and we had hard to such and such. So they're reducing it to 2 acres in order to put these things in to pass inspection. So right now, they're going on, probably using a water well and a road system.
No,
we're not doing that.
there's no aerobic or water on there.
We're gonna take for the.
Hold on, let's get back on task. There's a motion on the floor to approve the reduction in the acreage from 3 to 2.5 and deny the reduction in the space size. And I think, Madam Chair, you called for a vote. So all those in favor of that motion, raise your hand and say aye.
We have 3-1.
Okay, the motion fails. You have to have 75, you have to have 4 members approve. So would anybody else like to make a motion to either approve the entire variance or deny the entire variance? Right now, we're sitting in the middle.
Feel that we don't deny him, don't have everything that we need, if it's not gonna cause flooding or something.
Well, we handle all that stuff at the staff level. We'll submit construction plans and a drainage plan that will be reviewed by our engineer. So that's all part of the building permit process, not really part of what y'all do.
I'm saying I'm doing
Are you making a motion to approve the variance in its entirety?
right.
Is there somebody who would like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Wait, Mr. Attorney,
Yes, sir.
you go from where we made a motion to approve one part of it and not the other part. Now, you just made a statement to approve the whole thing.
I didn't make that statement. The statement I made is that because the other motion failed, 3-1, and you have to have 4 members.
Okay, I understand that.
So my question then was, would anybody like to make an additional motion? If they do nothing, then the variance is not going to be granted. Therefore, it has the same legal effect as just not passing. That makes sense.
You need a motion.
It's up to them, and he made the motion to approve the thing in its entirety. I asked if there's a
That's what
second.
I'm talking about. The entirety is all 3 things.
Yes, sir. That was his motion. I think you understand what the motion is, correct?
Yeah,
So
you want to.
your motion essentially would grant them the right to reduce the acreage from 3 to 2.5, as well as reduce the space size to 30 by 45, which then reduces the minimum area to 1350 per space.
And you said if, because it's to code and to like they need to be, they do everything like they need.
All those other issues are handled
Right.
at the staff level
Yeah.
during the permitting process. The question for y'all is, do you want to grant them relief this morning or not? But there is another motion on the floor in a second. Again, it's going to take 4 people to pass anything. And if this doesn't pass, then essentially the motion fails. The request fails in its entirety.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Mr. Phillips made the motion, Mr. Murphy seconded it. The motion
Oh, we need
is
to
to
vote.
approve all in
Yes.
entirety.
Okay, so let's vote, we need a vote on, the approval of all 3 variances.
We're doing all 3 variances or we're doing 2? That was the gentleman's question.
Yeah, but
He thought that he kind of snuck something in on,
right,
and they're listening, they're.
No, Mr. Terrell, he was,
Mr. Terrell.
yes.
I know Mr. Terrell.
So y'all have your draft order in front of you, correct?
Yes, sir.
That first paragraph outlines everything they're asking for. You can disregard the concrete and asphalt because they have the right to build it to either.
Right.
But those 3 issues, and I say 3, it's really 2, but one creates the other.
Right.
So the reduction in the space size to 45 feet and this total square footage to 1350, as well as the reduction of the total acreage from 3 to 2.5. That's the motion on the table. The prior motion, which was just to reduce the acreage, failed. Because one of y'all voted, I don't know who did, but voted against it.
Will it work?
Well, here, as a practical matter, and I went over and talked to the chief about that. Will it work if you don't allow for the reduction from 3 to 2.5? No, because they only have 2.5 acres. So if you deny that variance, they will not be able to use this property for purposes of an RV park, period. That would be the implication. The reduction in the space size, the question I had for the chief was, could they do it? Could they actually build this site, still comply with the fire marshal's rules as it relates to fire lanes and those kind of things, and just reduce the amount of total spaces on the site? His response was yes.
Yes.
So, and that's always a question for us, is that when you're looking at hardship, is the compliance of the rules going to deny them the ability to use the park for that purpose at all, or the track for that at all? And if they can build it to the larger size, yes, it's going to reduce the amount of spaces that they'll have available for customers, but it is physically possible. And I think that was your question. But I'll tell you that if you don't approve the reduction to 2.5, they will not be able to do an RV park at all. So that's the practical implication. The others, though, like I said, and you all should really ask yourself that question every time, is if they complied with our rules as written, could they do it? And in this case, they can.
Done. What before the board, do we need to make a motion?
There is a motion on the table to approve all of the variances as presented currently.
So what we need to do now is to vote. To approve it, or
I disapprove. I vote nay.
you will make. Motion fails.
Y'all have any interest in revisiting the acreage? Because again, the practical implication is if you, even though they have an SUP to use that for that purpose, they wouldn't be able to build an RV park there because we do not permit it. As part of the rules, they'd be in direct violation of the code. So if you want to revisit it, fine. If not, they just need to have a clear understanding as applicants that they will not be able to build the RV park.
I would like to revisit, if we could call something where maybe the board, maybe we could meet out there as a group and revisit or something we're trying to beautify, I understand what they're doing.
When I say revisit, I mean this morning.
This morning?
Yeah, during this meeting.
My car's in the parking lot. Because, things are changing, so, but we would have to consider if we did this for them. And what they're saying is you need 3 acres to do a recreational. So we would be saying that we would have to do that for somebody else. We have to consider that as our code for the city. We would be making that decision, and I think that's what Mr. Jones is saying.
I think it's worth noting that this issue was brought just to the Planning and Zoning Commission and council prior to today to see if council would even entertain the idea of allowing for an RV park on this site, knowing that it was less than 3 acres. So it wasn't necessarily a legislative change, and I appreciate what you're talking about. I think that's what Mr. Terrell was alluding to, is it's not your job to legislate. You're supposed to look at the rules, and in those rare circumstances where technical compliance creates a hardship, then it may warrant some relief. In this case, I think council addressed the broader legislative issue in reduction of acreage. Technically, though, that doesn't matter because the rule's still there, and they would have to legislatively reduce the size of the acreage for them to be able to do it, unless y'all grant some relief here at this point, if that makes sense.
So do we want to revisit the acreage? Or completely deny?
Yes, I think we need to do that. I think there's too much controversy here. I make a motion that we deny the variance because of the acreage.
Okay. So you make a motion to deny. Yeah. Okay, so now at this time, you need to vote.
Well, it hasn't been a second.
Oh, a second.
Does anybody want a second denial of the variance in its entirety? Knowing that if y'all don't take action to approve anything today, it has a legal effect of denying the request. If you do nothing today, and just we adjourn the meeting, then that's essentially their request is denied in its entirety. But there's a motion to deny in its entirety on the floor. Is there a second?
You just had a motion to approve in its entirety and it failed.
Now there's a motion to deny. So it's a different motion. So my question was, do you want to revisit the acreage? So initially you made a motion to approve the acreage, but if y'all don't want to address the acreage, I just want you to know the practical implications. They will not be able to build an RV park there at all unless they approach council and convince council, going through the proper channels, going through P&Z and then council, to amend that legislatively to reduce it to 2.5. There's a, Madam Chair, for lack of a second, the motion fails.
Going with what he said, can it still get done with?
What's on the table now is to just deny it.
That motion failed for lack of a
What's
second.
on the table to deny, they don't have 3 acres. In the city code, they do have 3 acres to have a recreational park. And they don't have 3 acres, so
Yeah, the motion failed, so.
Would anybody else like to make a motion of any kind? Otherwise, the application in its entirety will fail this morning.
Can we plead from this end?
Yes, sir. You're the applicant. If you would like to make an additional statement, that's
You know, as the applicant, I would just love to at least start trying to build a RV park. If y'all kill this whole thing, I'm completely out of business of trying to do that. If you pass that one variance that allows me to build on 2.5 acres, I can at least go back to my architect and say, hey, I can't do the reduce it to 45, I gotta stay by 65. I still have to meet the fire marshal's rules. Let's redesign it, it's gonna reduce the total capacity. At least I can continue on. So I would love for someone to maybe motion that and maybe help us out with that.
And I also have a thing, in your thing, it says that you're allowed 20 RV spots per acre, right? Well, technically, you could do that, but you wouldn't have room for a road or anything else with the spaces being that big. I mean, even as we have it drawn out, hang on, there's only 31 spots, and we have 2.5 acres. It's because, and that's with the spots reduced. That's with the spots reduced. We only have 31 spots on 2.5 acres, but the ordinance say you can have 20 spots per acre, but in reality, you put in the office, you put in the shower, and you have to have that big road through there. There's not enough room to do 20 per acre. That's the only reason why we were reducing the size. And still.
There's
Did I say that properly?
That's fine. That's really not relevant. There's been a request from the applicant to reconsider the reduction of the acreage. Would y'all like to take that? If not, then the motion fails, and they'd have to approach council.
Do we have a motion to revisit and just the acreage? To approve changing it from 3 acres to 2.5. Do we have a motion to do that? To approve that?
I made a motion to deny because of the acreage, and I didn't get a second. I don't know what to do here.
The applicant has requested that y'all consider reduction from 3 to 2.5 acres. Would anybody like to make that motion? If there is no motion or second or vote on that, then that request would be denied. That's really what we're talking about right now.
Do everyone understand what's at stake here? They will not be able to go forward with their plans for an RV park.
Well, just a project at all.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be permissible on this track.
they wouldn't be able to do it at all if we don't at least, approve the variance for the reduction of the acreage. That's what, that's where we are right now. Just the acreage. Would you like to, we need a motion to, approve that.
Our motion to approve that. As long as it don't.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to reduce the acreage from 3 to 2.5. Is there a second?
Awesome.
Okay, Madam Chair, I think we've talked it to death, so we can call a vote. And maybe just, everybody raise your hand so we can see exactly who's in favor of this.
For the motion.
So who's in favor of approving the reduction in the acreage from 3 to 2.5? Please raise your hand and say aye.
Motion passed. No? Oh,
Well, Madam Chair, you are a member. Are you voting?
yes, okay, yes, I will.
That's 4 to 1.
Okay,
The motion passes.
thank you.
And Angela, I assume you'll revise the order accordingly and make sure the applicants get it.
Sure, Mr. Olson, I'll take care of that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone for your patience. At this time, we're going to go to item number 4, and that is discussion and possible action on various requests by TNP Inc. agent for Cleveland ISD owner for location listed as Highway 321, James McCoy, tract 50, acres 12, for a height variance to allow a maximum of 45 feet instead of 35 feet for new Cleveland ISD admin building. Property is now all zoned general commercial.
Good morning, thank you, Board. My name is Steve Alloway. I'm with Huckabee Architects. TNP Inc. is our civil engineer that actually did the paperwork filing for the variance. This is for the Cleveland ISD new administration building. Their new administration building property is there's, can you go back? Is that the PowerPoint? Yeah, go back. Yeah, there we go. So this property is just on the other side of Tractor Supply across from the high school. And what we're asking for today, if we go another side, you can see, well, they right here a second. The main highway running in front of the high school fronts this property as well on the other side of the street. What we're looking at doing is a single administration building with parking around it. If we could go to the next slide, the next one. This will house the administration for all of Cleveland ISD, as well as training spaces for the school district, staff training spaces. It is a 2-story building. We go to the next slide. The second floor is offices for the administration building. And then if we go to the next slide, this is a rendering of that administration building. And what we're asking for today is, you'll see how that sloped roof slopes up over the main spine of the building. There's a portion of that sloped roof that exceeds 35 foot. It's actually right now designed to be at 40 foot. We're asking for a variance to go to 45 foot just because we have some roof thicknesses and stuff, but we're nominally going to be right at 40 foot. The engineer has visited with Chief Anderson or his associates. From a fire standpoint, they did not have an issue with that peak going to 40 foot. So the variance on the table today is asking, can we exceed the 35-foot height limit and make this building slope up to approximately 40 foot? We're asking for 45 just because it's not a final design.
Two quick things. I want y'all to recognize that we're talking about the applicant is a school district that also has a power eminent domain just like we do. So there are certain rules that, if they make sense, that yes, we want to enforce. Otherwise, granting relief in this case makes a lot of sense. And talking with the chief, the reason why the city initially had a 35-foot height restriction is because we had a limited ladder on our ladder truck for fire suppression purposes. We have a much taller ladder truck now, which could well exceed 45 feet. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but I think ultimately at the staff level, we were going to bring back a recommendation to increase the minimum size, height restrictions to commercial anyways at some point. So staff has no objection to granting this request.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Any discussion concerning the variance?
No discussion.
Thank you. All right, can I get a motion to approve or deny the variance?
I'll approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
And if we can vote, all in favor for to approve the variance? Motion passed. At this time, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? And a second? Adjourn. All right. Yeah. All in favor to adjourn the meeting? Say aye.